Hello everyone and a very warm welcome to another podcast of Clara in Conversation with me, Claire Ford. On today's podcast, I am chatting with Grant Stott, TV and radio presenter, DJ, star of stage and screen, panto villain, soap star, actor, performer, after-dinner speaker, charity fundraiser and much more besides. And if all that isn't enough, when he sees a harp beamed into the night sky, he dons his mask and his green cape and joins the fight to save his favourite football team from going out of business. Hello, Grant, and a very warm welcome to Clara in Conversation.
Well, Clara, thank you so much for asking me. That's quite a lovely list that you listed there. I must write that down and put that on my CV.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on today. Really excited about this podcast, and everybody at home is as well. And I hope you really enjoy it and that you gain something from it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Grant, as we just heard, you've had a very wide and varied career in the entertainment industry, but an early setback meant that you sought employment in a very different, more prosaic area of work, as a police officer. This was in 1986, just before Ian Rankin introduced us to Rebus, and Irvine Welsh exposed the seedy underbelly of Edinburgh's drug problem that the tourists rarely see. Apart from being the perfect height and physique for the police, what first attracted you to law enforcement work?
The fact that I didn't have a job was the first big incentive. As you quite rightly said, it was a set of circumstances which led to that path in my life opening up. It was the summer of 1985. I had just left Gillespie's High School in Edinburgh, full of ambition and intention of becoming an actor. And I had no doubt in my mind that's exactly what I was going to do. I had spent 6 years at high school preparing for going to drama college, so I prepared by getting the necessary qualifications, which back in 1985, if you wanted to get into drama college, you needed 4 O grades and 2 hires. I achieved that by 5th year, so 6th year I just had a bit of a party. And then when it came to leaving school, I bid a fond farewell to all my chums, and everybody said, "That's me. Hi diddly-dee, an actor's life for me. I'm off to drama college." But the only flaw in my plan was that I may not succeed. I may not get past the audition stage, which turned out to be the case. I tried for every drama college in the land, down from London through to Glasgow, here in Edinburgh to Queen Margaret, and I wasn't successful in any of my bids to get into drama college. So you can imagine that was quite a downer and quite a sort of, a really big early punch in the stomach from life to sort of say it doesn't always pan out the way that you intend it to. But I wasn't too worried in so much that what was I going to do, because at the time I was DJing in nightclubs in Edinburgh, a particular place called Coasters and Outer Limits, which was this huge venue in Tollcross. By day and by evenings, it was for the under-18s and roller skaters. And then at 10 o'clock at night, we'd turn it around. It would become this really fantastic, massive nightclub for the over-18s. So I was DJing there, earning loads of cash, and then so I thought, well, that's fine. I'll just have to, get my head around the fact that I'm not going to be an actor, but I'm DJing, so I'm all good. And then I think it was in September of that year, the place went on fire, which kind of stopped me and my income in its tracks. I kind of just, all of a sudden, literally overnight, found myself with nothing. So my mum, being, classic mum, said, well, you're just going to have to get yourself a proper job because, playing records isn't going to get you anywhere in life, son. And she showed me an advert in the Scotsman that said Lothian and Borders Police recruiting drive was on. So she was going to apply for that. So I applied for that. And as you said, I was tall enough. And there was no worry about the height restriction, which they had back then. I got in, managed to get past all the tests, the physical tests, the interview tests, the written tests, and within 6 months, January 1986, I signed up as one of Lothian and Borders' finest. So yeah, it was an early lesson in life that it doesn't always work out the way you think, and within a very short space of time, you could be doing something entirely different.
Wow, that's interesting. And your acting career has seen you playing the parts of some very nasty, unpleasant and Machiavellian characters, Grant. After spending 4 years upholding law and order and the police, what did the casting directors of the Edinburgh King's panto first see in you that made them think that you would make the perfect pantomime villain?
I think this is kind of going back to your last question. It's the height as well. I think was maybe something that stood me in good stead. The fact I was 6'3". But my panto career started in 1993, and I didn't get to be a villain until I think it was 2003. So it was about 10 years on. But I will say that the villain was the role that I very quickly set my sights on. I didn't think I was funny enough to be a kind of Buttons kind of character. I thought I was far too good looking to be the Dame. So I thought the villain looks to be an awful lot of fun. And I worked with some terrific villains in my early days in panto in Glasgow. Worked with the likes of the wonderful Sandy Morton, with the great Jan Wilson, and got to just watch them up close. And then when it came, and I remember it came about by default, because I was always playing these little supporting characters in the show for these first sort of 10 years or so. And then my producer in 2002, his name is Paul Elliott, he phoned me up and he said, right, Grant, he says, I think it's about time that we promoted you to becoming a principal in the show. And this year, for fun enough, Snow White, we're going to have you as the handsome prince. How do you feel about that? And I went, oh, I was absolutely ecstatic to get, a named role in the show, a proper named role in the show. So this was me. I was telling everyone, I'm playing the handsome prince this year in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And then when the poster came out, it had Grant Stott as the prince. They didn't bother with the handsome bit. So that bit was quickly taken off the poster. And then when we got to do the show, I soon realized I was rubbish as a prince, because the prince is this straight, tall, good-looking, heroic, sings like a bird kind of, and that's not me. I can't sing very well, and I wasn't particularly at home with the sort of straight, handsome, I'm here for the princess, and I wasn't great. And then so I thought, that's it, that's my panto career finished, it's all over. And then the following summer, the producer, Paul Elliott, phoned me up once again. And he says, well, we tried you being very good, and you weren't. So this year, I think we'll make you bad. And so that was my first year, 2003. It was Jack and the Beanstalk, and I played Flesh Creep. And ever since then, I've been wearing either the heels of villainy or the leather trousers of villainy, depending on what the role came in. And I have absolutely loved it. It was one of the most important things that happened in my sort of journey in panto, was getting my hands on the villain. And I love it because we always get to do something different with it every year. And it's a joy. And, you walk out on stage and people boo you and you don't have to say anything. And so, you can walk out on stage, the whole place goes boo. And I think, well, okay, that's it. My work is done. I can leave now. So no, it's great. I love it. So yeah, and the fact that I can be, as I mentioned, a woman one year, a man the other, and all the different traits of evil can be enjoyed. So yeah, I really enjoyed the villain.
That's brilliant. And during the time that you were working as a police officer, Grant, you were indulging your passion for music on your days off by DJing in various Edinburgh nightclubs, as you mentioned earlier on, much to the chagrin of your bosses in the constabulary, I would imagine. How did your nocturnal exploits first catch the attention of your police inspector? And more importantly, how was it received?
Well, I know exactly the answer to both those points. I was, back then, this was 1988, 89, and I was working in Jedburgh as a police officer by day. And then I would jump into my car when I finished my work and drive up to Edinburgh and then become a DJ by night. And it was all going well because, back then, no mobile phones, no social media, no internet, nothing like that. So I thought, no one's ever going to know about my double life as a disc jockey up in Edinburgh, until one night I was behind the decks playing my Rick Astley and Terence Trent D'Arby and Pepsi and Shirley, whatever I was playing. And then I looked down onto the dance floor, and there was this group of about 8 to 10 young ladies, all dressed to the nines. And they were all looking up at me going, is that big Polis there was a group of 10 girls from Jedburgh, which was the town I was stationed in, had come up to Edinburgh for a hen night or a birthday night out or something. And they couldn't believe what they saw behind the decks, and I couldn't believe what I saw on the dance floor. And in my naivety, I kind of gave them a wee wave and went, "Hi, how you doing?" And thought, oh, well, they're having a night out. They're having a great time. They're not going to remember where they were last night, let alone who was playing the records. So I thought, nobody's going to say anything. I'm not going to become the gossip. I'm not going to become the talk of the steamy down in Jedburgh. Let me tell you, I think it took 2 days before I got a summons from my chief superintendent. No, it was my chief inspector. My chief inspector in Kelso was a man called Bill Clinton. I kid you not, it's writing itself. Bill Clinton was his name, and he summoned me through to his office in Kelso. And are you allowed to swear on this podcast? I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead. Are
you sure? Sure? Because I'm well, and it's only for effect, and this was absolutely what he said to me. So I went into his office, and I knew I was in trouble when I wasn't invited to sit down. And I was asked to stand 6 feet from his desk. And he didn't even look up. He was just writing away something on his desk. And he said, "PC Stott, it has come to my attention that you may or may not be disc jockeying in a nightclub in Edinburgh. Now, I'm not going to ask you whether you are or are not disc jockeying in a nightclub in Edinburgh. I'm just going to say, fucking stop it." So, I think that was the beginning and the end of his internal investigation into whether, and yeah, so it was an early, don't take another job warning when you're in the police. But needless to say, I did. I obviously went back and I continued to do it, and then very shortly afterwards found myself back up in Edinburgh, and then I left to join Radio 4. So, but no, I'll never forget, that was one of the most entertaining dressing downs I've ever had, and I've had a few. I didn't lose my job over it.
And after 4 years pounding the beat with DJing as a sideline, you decided to follow your heart and try and make a career doing something that you truly love, Grant. You did the odd graveyard shift on the radio, but were then rewarded with your own show on Radio 4. How big a decision was it for you to leave a steady and secure job with the police, with guaranteed earnings and a good pension, to enter the uncertain world of the radio industry?
That was a massive decision. I mean, you can imagine, I'd been in the police for 4 years by that point. I'd passed my training. I'd got through the probationary period. I was basically set, as you say, for a great salary and a wonderful pension. But I got this opportunity to do these 2 graveyard shifts on Radio 4. That was 1 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the morning, and 2 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the morning on sort of Saturday and Sunday. It was the worst. They are the worst shifts in any radio schedule. However, I saw this as an opportunity. I saw this as my way in. And at the time, I was 22 years of age, I think, 22, 23. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have a wife. Didn't have any kids. The only thing I had to worry about was the bank loan for my car. And I was staying with my mum and dad at the time, so I didn't even have any rent to worry about anything. So it was like, if I'm ever going to get an opportunity to take a risk and do something absolutely crazy, then this is the time to do it when you're 22. Take a chance, walk away from a career and go. And I have to give credit to the police on this one, because the week before I left, I got called in by my inspector again. But this was for a nice chap. And he gave me... which is like an appraisal of my last year or whatever. And he says, you may think it's a bit silly me giving you an appraisal as you're about to leave the job. He says, but we just want you to know that we send you off, and we wish you all the very best in your broadcasting career. However, if it doesn't work out, if things don't go well for you, please come back. Now, I've never forgotten that, because that gave me such confidence. That gave me such... sort of peace that I could actually really go for this, knowing that if it didn't work out, I would be gutted, but I would have a job to then go back to, which to this day I think was such a lovely thing for them to do. They could have been bitter and angry and go, we've spent all this money training you up and getting you ready, and just as you're almost useful to us 4 years in. you leave. So it was a huge decision, but one that I was able to make with confidence and reassurance because we'd had that chat with the inspector. And there was a point, some 26 years later, that I thought about going back to the police when I left Radio 4th in 2017. Says, can I go back to the police just for 6 months and then get my pension? But I don't think they were that keen on having me back for there was that. But it was it was a big decision, a bold decision, and certainly one of the biggest decisions I've ever made. I made a couple recently, but that was certainly one of the biggest and boldest decisions ever. But I'm glad I did, and I think it was. I've always lived with the sort of ethos in my life. I would much rather fail at something. I'm always prepared for failure. You have to be, because that's what life is going to chuck at you. But I would much rather experience failure than not having tried something. You can try something and then go, actually, I'm not very good at it, and that's maybe not for me. And then you can get closure on that one. But for me, the thought of driving into work, listening to the radio and going, no, I could have done that. That might have been me.
Yeah,
that would have tortured me, and it would just been unbearable. So, so that was the kind of motivation behind it. I would much rather try something and fail, and go, okay, fair enough, than just be too scared to try something in the first place.
Yeah. When
Drama College shut its doors, I mean, this was, as I say, 1985, and different to now, where it's kind of expected that it's kind of, certainly in the Royal Conservatoire, for example, in Glasgow, it's a kind of given that you're not going to get in on your first attempt. Everybody pretty much knows that you very rarely get in on your first attempt. So it's kind of accepted that you will have to try 2, 3, maybe 4 times before you finally get in. And part of that is to sort of prove your dedication and prove how keen you are to do this. But back then, I just assumed because I didn't get in, I was never going to be an actor. So that was my kind of, oh right, I'll have to give up on that. That's not going to happen. They don't want me. And I never thought, well, just give it a year and go back and try next year. That thought didn't even enter my head.
Yeah. And in addition to your radio, in 1992, your television career began by presenting the children's TV programme Let's See Go 4-5 with Sally Gray. And by the end of that year, you were presenting BBC Scotland's coverage of children in need. That's a meteoric rise in anyone's book. Can you tell us how these opportunities came about to present these shows?
It's often the way, and I say my one bit of advice, if anyone says to me, how do you get into radio and how do you get into television, and certainly as far as radio is concerned, my first bit of advice would always be get your foot in the door, get into the radio station and make tea, answer the phones, do whatever you can, and opportunities will arise. And I've seen that happen certainly with a lot of colleagues at Radio 4th. And with myself at the BBC, I'd started working at Radio 4th in 1990. I then went for a job and I got my first BBC radio job in the summer of 1990. It was called a programme called Check This. So that got me working in the education department of the BBC, which was at that time in the studios in Queen Street in Edinburgh. So we were making these radio programmes for schools, for primary 4s and 5s, and I'm in the office, and you're in the office with all these other producers that are making radio programs, but similarly, all these other producers that are making television programs. And one day, somebody was sitting in the office that had a commission to make a program about the Green Belt for education, and they didn't have a presenter. And I was across the desk, and they went, Grant, have you tried telly yet? And I went, no. Would you like to? And I was like, yes. And so I got a chance to make this one television program, which then gave me enough to have a little tiny showreel. And then the same department had got a commission to do a series for what turned out to be Let's See Go 4-5. And I got the job as the male presenter, and the fabulous Sally Gray got the job as the female presenter. And then that was me really kind of thrown in. So the answer to your question, how did that come about? It was just by being in the right place at the right time. It was by being there and being the answer to somebody's problem. They needed a presenter. I was in the room, and they says, right, how'd you fancy it? And that was that. And it was a quick, and it was just a wonderful bit of timing, luck that I was in the office that day, that I was in the office that afternoon, and and that was my in. And Go 4-5 was this ongoing series which gave me great experience because we filmed all the time. We were up and down the country in different primary schools all over Scotland. And we did a lot of it on the hoof, and we did a lot of it improvised, and a lot of it was, because in the early 1990s, I remember it was also the explosion of The Big Breakfast with Chris Evans. And he kind of changed the way television was made, and he changed the way television was presented with that show. And I was just in awe of it. So we kind of tried to make our own kind of version of not The Big Breakfast, but a Big Breakfast show using that style of presenting with a bit madcap. The cameras were handheld, you were running about daft, everything was all very excited. So that got us that got me off into working in television.
Yeah. Sounds like great fun as well. And you grew up in Edinburgh, Grant, not too far away from where your father had his newsagents, and a stone throw away from your beloved King's Theatre. Your acting, radio, television and stage careers have all centred around Scotland, in particular Edinburgh. What is it about Edinburgh that has such a strong hold on you? And were you ever tempted at any point to move down south to pursue your radio and television career, or indeed move to America to do it?
Well, Edinburgh for me is home. As you say, I was born and brought up here. My dad's shop was in Gilmer Place, and we lived around the corner in Upper Gilmer Place, which is, as you say, literally along the road from the King's Theatre and down the road from what was my primary school, Bruntsfield. And Edinburgh is a city to live in. For me, it's fantastic because it has everything. It's very compact. It has everything that you need, but yet, you don't have to travel for hours to get across town. Well, sometimes you do if the roadworks are bad, but anyway. So I'm hugely passionate, hugely proud of coming from Edinburgh. But a lot of my work has been outside of the city. I work a lot in Glasgow, and now I'm travelling to Dumbarton to film for River City. And certainly in the 90s when I was doing Fully Booked, and that was a sort of national network TV show, we were often all over the country. And there was talk, we were sort of thinking, do I go to London? Because that seems to be where everything's happening. You've got to go to London if you want to be a TV presenter. You have to move down there. But what kind of stopped in its tracks is I'd not long got married. My son was born at that point as well. And it's like, well, this is now, compared to, when I left the police, this is not now the time to be taking huge risks with your life. This is not the time to be taking big chances. So we kind of made the decision to stay based in Edinburgh. And if need be, I can travel for my work, and that's kind of how it's been. So we did think about it and talk about it, but at the end of the day, my wife, who was working at the time in Edinburgh, had no great aspirations to leave. I certainly wanted my family to be based in Edinburgh, and I thought, well, if I need to go anywhere for work, I can do so and travel, and that's kind of how it's been. Although, as you say, so much of my work has been in Scotland, and particularly in Edinburgh. I've not really had to worry about that too much. I've always been able to get back here to if I need to be,
Yeah, that's brilliant. And after getting that big break on Let's See Go 4-5, Grant, your resume contains presenting some of our best loved children's TV programmes. You just mentioned there, Fully Booked, CBBC, See You See Me, Wamesby 902-101, and even Jack and Ori. Was the role of children's TV presenter one that you consciously sought out in the 1990s?
I think it was the one that kind of came naturally to me because, I was in my 20s, I was having a lot of fun on the radio, and I wanted to have a lot of fun on television, and the natural fit for that was kids TV. And I've got another experience about getting into children's telly, and it was another lesson learned, and I think it's a really valuable thing for people to know about perseverance and how you have to just, when you get a knockback, you got to continue to try. An example of that was how I got the job on Wamesby 902-101. Now, up until that point, there was a mainstay of children's television on STV called Glenn Michael. And Glenn Michael's Cavalcade was essential viewing on a Sunday afternoon for many people of my generation. And I'd put together, with all the stuff that I was doing at the BBC, I managed to put together a little showreel on a VHS tape. And I sent it to STV, and I sent it to their entertainment department. And I said, if you're looking for a kids television presenter for any new shows, here's my showreel. And so I sent it off with a jiffy bag. Off it went. And then it got sent back to me about a week or so later with a letter that said, "Dear Grant, thanks very much for your VHS. We've nothing in the pipeline at the moment, but we'll keep you on file," kind of thing. And sent my video back. That same day, I opened up the Daily Record newspaper, and it said, "STV hunt for the new Philip and Sarah," who were Philip Schofield and Sarah Green were presenting. I think it was Live and Kicking at that time, going live. And basically said STV are launching their new Sunday morning kids TV show. And I'm looking at my jiffy bag that they've just sent me back in the letter that said, "We've got nothing in the pipeline." And here's this page in the Daily Record saying they're about to launch a search for the new presenters. So first of all, I was really cross, right? First of all, I was really, how dare they? You know, I've just, you know, how dare they say they've got nothing going on? But then I thought, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. So I got another jiffy bag, and I took the same VHS tape, and I put it in another jiffy bag, and I sent it again to STV for the attention of the department that was putting this kids show together, and sent it in and said, "Here, I hear you're looking for a new presenter for a new kids TV show. Here's my tape." Same tape that had just been sent back saying they've got nothing. That tape got me an audition through in Cowcaddens one Sunday morning. And from that audition, I got the job. And it taught me a lesson that no matter how miffed you might get at somebody's reply, don't be so stubborn as to go, "Right, that's it, I'm going to, you know, cut off my nose to spite my face," kind of thing. Because if I hadn't sent that video in again, I would never have got the in, and I would never have got that job. And that led to a wonderful year working at STV on Weemsby 902-101. So it was one of those, it's like, you know, I'm so glad again, you know, I'm so glad that I made that decision to send that tape in. And then through doing that, you get spotted by the guys at the BBC. And then when they came to putting Fully Booked together, and I'd been working on Mega Mag, the summer programme for them in 1994. And then, as it happened, Fully Booked came in 1995. And I got the job without even auditioning this time. It was lovely.
It just shows you if you keep trying, then you get there. And I think
Absolutely.
that's a fantastic message as well.
It's perseverance, Claire, and it's like, it's just not giving up. You know, if there's something that you want to do, and, you know, what I'm doing now on River City is an example of that, and never giving up. And, you know, and you do, and just because people say no to you, it doesn't mean to say it's not going to happen.
Absolutely. And during the time that you were having the success on the television, you continued to host your hugely popular show on Fourth One, a station that you had a long association with that lasted 27 years until 2017. After your departure from Radio 4, BBC Radio Scotland approached you to see if you could front the afternoon show on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then on Friday nights you were given the opportunity to stand in during the football close season. It was from this that the Vinyl Collective was born, which has proven to be such a massive hit with listeners up and down the country, including with myself and my family. As someone who's registered blind, I tend to listen to the radio before I watch the television, as I love the intimacy of radio. Rush sing that radio comes bearing a gift beyond price, almost free. What is it about radio that inspires such loyalty and devotion, Grant?
Well, you won't be surprised to hear that I'm a massive and passionate fan of radio as well, in all its forms, in all its shapes and guises. I think what radio gives you first and foremost is that intimacy, and it is that sense of, you know, you're being connected. You know, the person on the radio is connecting with you, the listener, in a way that I just don't think you can with television. And because it is, you know, certainly when I started in radio, my approach was, I've got a microphone in front of me, and I've effectively got one person on the other side of the desk. So when I speak into that microphone, I'm speaking to one person. You know, because, well, first and foremost, because the thought of speaking to thousands of people terrified me. And so I had to get that image out of my head, and I just thought, and it was, again, it was another, I think it was a Radio 1 DJ, Peter Powell, who said he would put a jacket on the chair opposite him with an A4 piece of paper, and he just wrote the word smile on that piece of paper, put it on the jacket, and so he focused his whole attention to that, and that, you know, pretend person, and the piece of paper reminded him to smile, because you can hear a smile in your voice. You know, if you're just listening to somebody and they're smiling, it somehow magically comes across, and you can pick that up as a listener. And I think that is what is radio's key success, is that personal connection between the presenter and the listener, and how you engage with each other. And I've been in radio now, since 1990, so that's 32 years, and I've been through all the and there's been massive changes in radio of late. There's been, the rise in technology. There's been how radio is made, how radio is listened to, how you get into it. Everything about the industry has changed massively. And I've also heard the stories that radio was on the way out. I remember when the iPod came along, and then thought, oh well, that's it. This is the death knell of radio. People are not going to listen to radio anymore. Far from it. People have continued to listen to radio, and it's droves, because you get an instant hit of information, entertainment, or music. And you don't have to search about on the TV channel to find the show that you want to watch or da-da-da. Radio, turn it on, and you're going to get something that's instant and it's mostly live that you will want to hear. And yeah, and I think that's radio's success, and I think it is really interesting given how old it is as a medium, but how strong it is now in 2022, and how people continue to engage in it. And in all the things that I've done, moving to the BBC was another one of these big decisions. Leaving Radio 4, I should say, was one of these big decisions which led to me joining the BBC, which has worked out wonderfully for me, and I'm so grateful. But the Vinyl Collective it's really interesting, because I've done radio, as I say, for all these years, and on a Friday night when I do the vinyl show, I'm just doing what I've always done. I'm playing records and talking in between them. It's not rocket science, right? It's not anything new. It's not groundbreaking. But what I've done is I'm saying, I'm just playing it off records, which nobody does now. And I can show you, on my left-hand side here, I've got a wall of vinyl, and this is the truth of where this whole show came from. It's because I held on to all my vinyl from when I was DJing in the 80s to, till CDs came. And then when CDs came, I boxed them all up and put them away. I didn't get rid of them like so many people did. So then I started bringing them out again when vinyl started coming back and people started getting turntables. And then I said to the bosses at Radio Scotland, they said, do you want to do a music show? And I was like, oh, yes. I says, but there are so many different music shows already on Radio Scotland that, you've got so many areas already covered. I could just do one about vinyl and my record collection. And they embraced it. And, since it found its home on a Friday night, because that happened, I was doing, as you rightly said, I was filling in for the sport in the summer, in 2017 and 2018, and then when COVID came and the football got taken off, they says, right, we're going to put you on a Friday night between 6 and 8 if you can fill that gap for a wee while until this COVID thing disappears. And 2.5 years later, the Vinyl Collective is still there, and the reaction I get for that show is, without a shadow of a doubt, the most remarkable reaction I've had to any radio show I have ever done. Wow. It's really struck a chord. It's really hit a nerve. And I love that. I was walking down Morningside Road last week, and I was crossing the road, and there was a guy walking towards me, and his face just kind of lit up. And he stopped, and he came back, and he showed me his phone. He says, I'm listening to last Friday's Vinyl Collective, and you're crossing the road in front of me. And he says, I love it. He says, your show has made me get my vinyl out and get my turntable out. And I hear that so often. People have kind of just really loved the experience of getting back into vinyl. And I think because I'm tapping into a particular sort of generation of music lovers as well has been has really worked. But no, I love it, and I loved it, and it's a real labor. I love it. It's my show. It's my idea. It's they are my records that I play, and the feedback and the reaction has been terrific, and I love the fact that you and your family enjoy it too, because that's what the show's all about. And I try to create this image of a Friday evening or whatever time you listen to it, you've basically just got big Grant Stott sitting in the corner of the room playing some records. Because that's what I do if there's a party going on and I'm there. I'll take control of the music and I'll just sit in the corner and play all the... So that's what I try with the Vinyl Collective. Get on with your Friday night. Get on with what you're doing. But you've basically got this big idiot in the corner who's playing some records for you to listen to while you're having your takeaway or your bottle of wine or whatever.
Absolutely, it's certainly what we do. Music's been with me since day one, really, since I was a wee tot. Just been obsessed with the radio. And then throughout your whole life, really, through the dark times, through the happy times, it's there with you. The pandemic was the classic example of one of these times that the Vinyl Collective really lifted everyone's spirits during that time. So it shows you the power of one person, that voice speaking through the radio.
Yeah, that's lovely to hear, and it kind of echoes what other people have said. I think the whole thing with COVID and the timing of my show, because every day was kind of merging into the next, and we didn't have the structure to our weeks that we do normally. You had a Monday to Friday, and then you had a weekend. Like every night was just kind of, and every day was just kind of the same. But Friday, because the Vinyl Collective was on a Friday, people kind of started making a wee point of making it a Friday, and they would send me in photographs of the cocktails that they made, or the wine that they were drinking, or the beer that they were having, or the food that they were making, and it became a bit of a point to listen, which I think again goes back to what makes radio so special. It's like it can create these little moments in your week, and yeah, that was lovely, and it also gave me a real focus through COVID as well. I mean, the 3 radio shows that I was doing, everything else that I did, all my work fell off the cliff, and I lost all my work, but I had those 3 radio shows a week, which kind of, not only financially and but was able to keep myself afloat with those 3 shows, but it kind of gave me a purpose every week as well. So it was radio was a big savior for me in those days, and getting to think about what I'm going to play this week, what I'm going to play tomorrow. All helped. So yeah, it was it helped me through lockdown as well.
Absolutely. And I think just having that focus every day was crucial for us all. My podcasts have been really good for me in that regard as well, and just other things that I've been doing, campaignings. So yes, everybody had their focus during the day, but that was what was also interesting. What was also interesting is you talk about your podcast became quite important to you, and wasn't it strange how we all of a sudden found ourselves learning skills and learning how to do things that we probably wouldn't normally have done. I don't know if you were doing your podcast before lockdown, but all of a sudden I had to start learning how to record from home and work from home, and get my head around technology to be able to do things that I probably would never have normally have done. But that's what lockdown made us do. So yeah, it was really interesting how we all had to learn new skills. Yeah. And nowadays it's continuing as well. It just shows you how valuable that's been, that we're continuing this hybrid approach too. So it's fantastic. And the first time I ever encountered you, Grant, was during the Live and Loud concert at Hampden Park in June 2004. Yes. Wow. And listening to you on the radio ever since, I'm struck by how broad and varied your taste in music really is. I have a very eclectic taste in music as well, although I have to confess I'm not a massive fan of country and western music. Apologies to Brian Burnett and Ricky Ross if they're listening to the podcast. But what about you, Grant? Is there any genres of music that leave you cold or you just don't get?
I'm not a massive country and western fan either. I think we can share that. But, there is obviously country and western artists that I really do enjoy listening to. For example, I'll give you an example. I was listening to an interview with Michael Bublé on, I think he was doing Tracks of My Years with Ken Bruce on Radio 2. And Ken Bruce had asked him about his background and what had got him to sing, that style, the crooner style of song, the American songbook that he loved so much. He goes, well, that was the music that was played in my house all the time. He says, we had these records that were on, and that's all I heard. And then he said, Willie Nelson's Stardust album was never off the turntable. And it kind of stopped me in my tracks. I went, Willie Nelson? And this is taking him to singing these crooner songs. What is that? So I went and looked up this album. And this is an album by Willie Nelson, who's, of course, this legend, this wonderful country and western singer-songwriter. And he produced, in 1978, he put this album out called Stardust, which was basically his interpretations of these wonderful American standards. And it is absolutely gorgeous. you could never imagine, it's Stardust, the song itself, beautifully sung by Nat King Cole. And you think, how can Willie Nelson, in all his, you cannot compare Willie Nelson's voice to Nat King Cole's voice, but yet he takes that song and makes it his own, and it's every bit as beautiful as Nat King Cole's, but just very different. So I fell in love with this album, so I'm desperate to now try and get a vinyl copy of Stardust by Willie Nelson. So, but my point there is, here we are in 2022, and I'm still discovering music from 1978. And just because it's Willie Nelson, an artist I perhaps wouldn't normally go to, wouldn't stop me listening to. And that's one thing that Willie does great. He does, because he had an album out last year called That's Life. And it's him covering again. It's another a collection of songs. And he does it beautifully. And so I've got, every time I'm out and about in a secondhand record shop or a charity shop, I'm thumbing through and trying to find Willie Nelson's Stardust. But no, music that keeps me cold, leaves me cold. Classical music I'm not into as in, I love the obvious ones. I love the sort of commercial classics that we all know and grow up. They've become themes for films or on TV shows and stuff like that. And but no, I'm not a massive fan of that. I'm not a massive fan of country and western. But yet, if I was to go through, I could probably pull you out a Johnny Cash album, a Glenn Campbell album, and a Willie Nelson album. So there you are. What do I know? But yeah, I've always loved music. But I think at the essence, and I've always described myself as a pop-tart, that I love pop music. I love popular music. I'm not a Vic Galloway. I'm not a Ricky Ross who can go deep dive into particular genres of music. And that's what I try and do with my vinyl collective. I might not necessarily play the hits by these artists, but the chances are, if you were listening to radio and going to clubs in the 80s and the 90s, you'll hear that kind of music on the vinyl collective. So that's where my interest is.
I definitely credit your show as well as Brian Burnett's show on broadening my genres of music that I like. I always class myself as like dance, R&B and pop. They were always my three favourite genres.
Right, okay.
But then
good.
I've developed into other stuff as well, because I've got my dad who loves singer-songwriters and heavy rock, and my mum's, she loves the 80s. So lots of different genres of music. Definitely is. It's something that you develop over time.
Just listening to the descriptions of the three different personalities and music tastes in your house, I would like to think I would have something for everybody on the vinyl collective. I think that's a good way to describe it. I think we would have a bit of dance, a bit of R&B, a bit of soul, a bit of rock sometimes, and definitely the 80s. So we'd keep mum and dad happy, and hopefully something for yourself as well.
To many people, Grant, you're inextricably linked with Scottish football, having hosted Scotsport, been a guest on both offside and off the ball, and having been prominent with your brother John and others in the Hands Off Hibs campaign. You were always nominally a Hibs fan when you were growing up, but it wasn't until you were in your early 20s that you started to take a serious interest in football. Was there a road to Damascus moment in your football conversion, Grant? Or was it just the slow realisation that you'd been missing out on something that had the ability to provide you with such spectacular highs as well as devastating lows?
What makes anyone follow the Hibs? It is indeed a road to Damascus moment. And no, it wasn't because I thought I was missing out on something, given that the 1980s wasn't a particularly good time for the Hibs fans. But there was a definite moment which changed my outlook on football, because, as you rightly say, my brother John, big Hibs fan, my dad was a big Hibs fan, and as I was growing up, I didn't really like football. I didn't play football, didn't go and watch football. I was listening to music. I was buying my records. I was listening to my records on my record player. That was my passion. John was into his football. I was into my music. And so he went to the football with my dad all through the 70s and into the 80s. And then what happened was, in the early 90s, John had moved down to London at this point. So my dad was going to football on his own. And I kind of remember thinking, because I'd been away from home for 4 years at this point, and I remember thinking, well, I've got a chance now to have a bit of time with my dad. And that's the football, because he's massive, and he was going on his own. So I thought, oh, that's a shame he's having to go on the football by himself. So I thought, well, I'll chum you. And through working at Radio 4th, Radio 4th sponsored the Weir Toyota Lounge or something in the stand at Easter Road. And I got offered a pair of tickets one week. And it says, look, you're a Hibs fan. Your dad's a Hibs fan, isn't he? I'm like, aye. He says, do you want to take him to the Weir Toyota Lounge on Saturday? And so that was it. I thought, oh, that'd be nice. Me and my dad having a wee day out. Let's do that. So I phoned up my dad. I says, Dad, what are you doing on Saturday? He says, I'm going to Easter Road. I says, you're going to go with me, though? He was like, what? And I was like, aye. He says, I've got a couple of tickets for the game. I'm going to take you to the football. He goes, well, you don't like football. I goes, I know, but I like my dad, so I want to hang out with you. So that was the motivation, was to spend time with my dad. And as a bonus, I fell in love with Hibs, and I fell in love with football. And it was a bit of, oh, what have I missed? But, you know, as I was only in my early 20s, I thought, okay, it's a good time to get into it. And that's kind of where it started. And from that season on, you know, and, you know, shortly after that, we won the Skull Cup, you know, and, you know, we'd survived the whole Hands Off Hibs thing. And so pretty much from that season on, I've been watching the Hibs every year ever since. And, yeah, it was just this another surprising thing. If you'd asked me if I was 18, you know, would I be going to football every week as a passionate Hibs fan and presenting Scott Sport and hosting big fan events at the Corn Exchange and at Easter Road, I would have went, no, I don't really know enough about the game. That's not going to happen. But as Forrest Gump says, life is like a box of chocolates. You don't really know what's going to come your way.
Absolutely. And it just shows you, when you go to the football, you just get gripped. I was 2 games,
Really?
and then I was absolutely gripped. I asked my dad for a season book after like 2 games, and then that was me. I was going to Celtic Park.
But the thing is, I bet your dad was absolutely delighted and so chuffed that you'd had that Damascus moment yourself when it all kind of opened up to you, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I was really going for the atmosphere to begin with, and then again, you learn over time, and you like it in different levels. It's the same with music as well. It's football and music are so similar that way. And many great football teams, Grant, have been threatened with extinction, and these events have often led to tremendous displays of unity and solidarity among fans. Few could have brought out the support in such spectacular shows of loyalty and defiance than the Hands Off Hibs campaign in the summer of 1990. Wallace Mercer, the owner of Hearts, Hibs' greatest rivals, sought to merge Hibs and Hearts in what would have been in reality a takeover, which would have resulted in Hibs losing their identity altogether and being subsumed into an Edinburgh team capable of challenging the Glasgow monopoly. Why was it so important for you, Grant, to join the fight to save your football club?
Well, first and foremost, because I saw what it did to my dad. And again, it goes back to, you know, that link, and it was his, you know, that Hibs have been the one constant in my dad's entire life. And, you know, for him to be faced with the threat of losing that was just, you know, it wasn't even worth thinking about. And Hibs, despite not being a fan of the team as I was growing up, in so much that I didn't go to the games and everything, but you know, my brother had Hibs posters up on the wall on his side of the room, and you know, Hibs was always talked about through the week. So, you know, you grow up with that environment, and it becomes part of your family. It becomes part of the tapestry of what makes your family tick and what makes the dynamics, what the conversations in the house. And so I knew just how important this was to my dad. And to give you an example, at that time, at the time that was all announced, I think I'd just started working Radio 4th, and my dad had gone into hospital to get 2 new knees put in. So he was getting surgery on his knees, getting replacement knees done. And so you can imagine, here's a massive Hibs fan. He's stuck in hospital. He can't get out to the shop to get the paper. He's listening to the radio to hear any snippets of information. He's desperate to find out what's going on. Of course, when we were going up to visit him, you know, we were giving him updates, and this is happening, this is what's being said. Again, this is pre-internet, pre-Twitter. We had no, you know, very few ways of getting your information back then. And when he gets out of hospital about a week and a half, 2 weeks or so after his operation, my mum went to pick him up. And she said, right, well, and which he was in the PMR, the Princess Margaret Rose Hospital at Fairmile Head, and they lived not far away at that time down Swan Spring Avenue. And my mum says, right, it'll just be a couple of minutes, we'll get you home. And my dad went, no. He says, I don't want to go home yet. She was like, what do you mean? You've been stuck in hospital for 2 weeks. Of course you want to go. Could you just take me down Easter Road? Could you just take me down and drive me past the stadium? He goes, I just need to go. So there's my dad, sprawled out in the back seat of the car because his legs couldn't bend, obviously, with his new knees. My mum drives him down to Easter Road. She parks up outside the stand, and he went, right, that's fine, we can go home now. And it was, I think it was the fear of losing that part of his life, that place from his life, which he was so, upset about. And I think that sort of sums up just how big a deal it was. The first thing he wanted to do when he got out of hospital was just to make sure that Easter Road was still there. So it was vital to him. And I mean, you saw the support. You saw that day at Easter Road when the Proclaimers came out and Joe Baker came on and kissed Easter Road turf, and the Hands Off Hibs fight really sort of took pace at that time. And then of course Sir Tom Farmer comes in and kind of saves the day, thankfully. So it was, but it was. You're absolutely right. It was a perilous time. We came unspeakably close to being wiped off the map, but from that, the phoenix rose from the ashes, and we went winning that cup shortly after that whole Hands Off Hibs thing. Winning the Skull Cup after that was the stuff of fairy tale, and that's what I've always felt about. When Hibs finally won the Scottish Cup, it was funny because my dad at that point had been to 7 Scottish Cup finals. He had, never seen obviously Hibs win the Scottish Cup. His dad had lived and died and never seen Hibs win the Scottish Cup. And I kind of had a funny, I said, Dad, I think Hibs will win it. But when we do win it, it's going to be nuts. It's going to be like, the way that we win it will be like, a movie script. I says, we're not going to do it straightforward. We're not going to do it the simple way. And indeed, that's exactly what ended up happening, to be faced with Hearts on the way in, to be 2-0 down against Hearts at half-time at Tynecastle, to come back and level at 2-2, to take them back to Easter Road for a replay, to win that, and to get on to Dundee United in the semi-final, to go to penalties, to lose our goalkeeper, Conrad Logan came in. It was a remarkable set of circumstances. And as you said, that's what happens when you start following a team. You're in for the long run, the highs and the massive lows. But those highs, when they come, makes it all worthwhile.
Definitely. It's definitely one of the greatest stories of Scottish football. I remember watching on the TV that day and seeing the sunshine and leaf on the TV. I mean, it's definitely one of the most moving moments in Scottish football. When we're singing it, when we sang it that day, on the occasions that we do sing it, it's usually a big occasion. It's it's a derby win, or it's a semi-final or a final win. But when we do it, I can barely get through it. It's a song I know inside out, upside down, backwards and forwards. But when we're singing it like that, in those circumstances with the scarves all around, and we're playing, while the Chief puts sunshine, I can never get the words out because I'm having a wee bubble like a bairn. Yeah. But that's what football does to you. That's exactly what it does to you. I'm stunned. Yeah. It's and you're right. It's a stunning story, and that song is just brilliant. And what do you think the success of the Hands Off Hibs campaign? Do you think it was down to purely footballing loyalties and supporters defeating big business, or do you think it was down to socio-political, tribal, and cultural reasons? I think all of the above, to be fair, played a part. I think it was a massive community move. It was the impact on the Leith area was the reason that Sir Tom Farmer got involved, because he was from Leith. He, again, didn't have an interest in football, but cared about the community in Leith. So that was his motivation for getting involved at the outset. The swell of support and the importance of 2 teams in Edinburgh was massive. There was the rally at the Usher Hall, which I went to for Hands Off Hibs, and
there on the stage was John Robertson, the Hammer of the Hibs, the renowned striker from Hearts. He was on stage. That was massive for him to do that. And he recognised, you need, Hibs need Hearts and Hearts need Hibs. And it's like, like it or not, the same with your team. You need your rivals, you need your other side of the city. And regardless, what would life be like without them? And I mean, although we've had it when Hearts have been relegated, they've had it when we've been relegated, and you had it when Rangers were relegated. It was all different, and there was lots of laughs, but you kind of knew they were always going to come back. What it would have been like that if they were completely and utterly obliterated and taken out of the game entirely is a different thing. It's a different thing entirely, and I think it was a poorly thought out move on Mr. Mercer's part. I think it's safe to say.
Absolutely. And we can't just sit here and talk about football and great music, Grant, without mentioning your love song to the Kingdom of Fife, That's Fife, which you wrote for the 2011 Radio 4 Awards. And for anyone who doesn't know, it's a parody of the classic old Blue Eyes hit, That's Life, which the last time I checked had approximately 266,400 hits on YouTube, which is actually the entire adult population of Fife itself, which is extraordinary.
Is it really?
Yes.
That's great. I love that.
Can you tell us the inspiration behind that song, Grant? But most importantly, are you safe enough to walk the streets of Ultimurty in Aberdeen?
That is, again, another one of life's quirky bits of fate that happened accidentally. As you mentioned, it was the lead up to the Radio 4 Awards in 2011, and I loved hosting the awards because it basically put me on the stage in between all these brilliant acts, and it was like doing a big variety show with some amazing special guests. So I always like to come up with something different, a wee sketch, a wee routine, use some of the special guests or not. Anyway, so this one year, I'm thinking about doing a song. I'd never done one before, and I thought, right, everyone else is singing songs on stage, I'm going to do one, but it's got to be a funny song, and it needs to be connected to Radio 4, and Radio 4, of course, broadcast to Edinburgh, the Lothians and Fife. So I thought I'll do a parody about Edinburgh, the Lothians and Fife, and I couldn't get anything to scan. I couldn't get any words to fit on Edinburgh, the Lothians and Fife. And then I was on the phone I was up till 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning one night, trying to write a song, and it just wasn't working. And I'm driving into work the next day, into my station at Forth, and I phoned my good friend, my lifelong friend, Mino Russo. And he says, how are you this morning? I says, I'm knackered. I was up till 2:30 trying to write a song for the awards. Couldn't come up with anything. And he goes, I've been telling you, he says, just do That's Life by Frank Sinatra, but call it That's Fife. Bing. Little light bulb moment. So, did my show that day, came straight home, got on my big computer, and I got a map of Fife, and I got the words to That's Life, and I just started writing. And then I put in all the place names and I thought, right, that's going to be a nice wee filler for the Radio 4 Awards. Mino helped me put together a PowerPoint with some images of Fife and well-known faces from Fife, and we did it and I tell you, there's been some moments in my career that will live with me forever. And that afternoon at the Usher Hall, when I sang That's Fife for the very first time in public, will stay with me my whole life. And you can hear it, because that clip that you hear on YouTube, you can hear the audience coming in. And at the end, I had a standing ovation. The place went absolutely bananas. And I remember going, because I really wasn't expecting. I was expecting it to be a wee bit funny and maybe get a nice wee laugh or something. But the place went crazy, right? And everybody was talking about it. And I'm going, for that one moment, I felt like a pop star, Claire. That was my one moment. I felt like a pop star. Anyway, the next day they put it onto YouTube, and the rest, as they say, is history. It's a massive story, which led to, during lockdown, I wrote a parody of That's Fife. So I wrote a parody of the parody and called it Save Lives, which was all about the pandemic and all about lockdown. And to sort of bring an end to that whole experience, I got one Sunday morning, I was lying in my bed and I got an email from my agent. It says, I think you better read this. And it was from Burbank, California. And it came from Dean Dean Cain, I think his name is. He wrote That's Life for
Wow.
Frank Sinatra. And here he is emailing me, and I'm thinking he's sending me a legal letter. He's going to close me down. He's going to wipe me out. He's going to sue me for everything. And he says, just want to know, I'm aware of That's Fife, and I'm particularly aware of Save Lives, because Save Lives went global. It went nuts. And he says, I just want to let you know that I love what you've done with that song. And I also love the special arrangement that you had with the piano at the very beginning of Save Lives, which it was my mate Pix who did that, who's our MD at the panto. And he said, just to say that I love what you've done.
Oh.
And I was just like, that is the most amazing bow on the end of that little story that anyone could ask. I think it was just such a lovely thing to have. And for him to do that was just brilliant. And never did I think, when I started that afternoon to write a song about Fife, that the man who basically wrote a hit for Frank Sinatra, Old Blue Eyes himself, would get in touch with me to say,
Wow.
well done, big fella, and can I borrow your instrument?
Oh. I mean, that's fantastic. As you say, the icing on the cake. Obviously I'm in Greenock, so I'm in the west of the country, so I obviously didn't see the thing at the time, but I've watched it on YouTube, and yeah, you can hear definitely the audience reaction.
One of the loveliest things was somebody sent me a text when it was kind of going a wee bit nuts at the radio station. Someone sent me a text, says, do you realise, big man, that we're going to be singing that in Fife every Hogmanay from here on in? And I was like, my work is done. I am done. Stick a fork in me. You know, it's not going to get any better than that. And if that's the legacy that I leave behind in my career, then I will be absolutely delighted with it. I love how, because it was just so nuts, right? It was just a silly song that I wrote, but the people, the good people in Fife, really embraced it, and I've sung it over there on a couple of occasions, and it's been lovely. And I remember walking in a pub in Fife once, and the karaoke guy put on my song on the karaoke. It's been turned into karaoke with my words. That's Fife is a karaoke song as well, and had the words on the screen and everything. I'm like, this is just crazy. This is off the scale. But yeah, I love it. Love it.
Fantastic. And speaking of wonderful things, I just recently received in the post tickets for this year's Edinburgh Panto, which is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Yes.
Yeah.
At the which is the Edinburgh King's Panto, but this year it's not. It's at the Festival Theatre in Edinburgh, in which you play the henchman, Grant. And it will star an amazing cast as always, including regulars like Alan Stewart and Jordan Young. This year will mark your third decade as part of pantomime, and your 23rd year in a row as part of the Edinburgh King's Panto, which is incredible. And congratulations on both feats. Panto has such ancient origins and has been a Christmas time staple for many families over generations. Why do you think pantomime has played such an important part in our Christmas time traditions? And how do you account for its longevity?
I think there was one word in your question there that kind of really sort of summed up, and that's family. And because it is such a family-based tradition, because it's so much of our audience are families who are coming to the theatre. They may not go to the theatre any other time of the year, but they will come to see the panto. And it's because it's one show that they know everybody can go to and enjoy. It's not the Singing Kettle. You know, it's not a kids show like the Singing Kettle. No disrespect to the Singing Kettle, arty and Scylla, brilliant. But it is something for everyone in our panto, and in many pantos. So I think that's the key for its success. I think what's given us a bit of longevity in Edinburgh is the team. You know, Alan, myself, and our late much missed pal Andy, and Jordan. We have so much fun on the stage. I think the audience feel part of that as well. There's a connection. It's like what we talked about with the radio. There's a real connection with the audience in the theatre and in panto, and they're there. We're there to see them, and they're there to see us, and they really enjoy it when things perhaps go off on a slightly different tangent, and they look forward to those moments, as do we. But we've got a lovely relationship with the audience at the King's in Edinburgh, and we really hope that make that move across the meadows to come and see us at the Festival Theatre. We're going to have it's going to be a real spectacle this year. But the thing is, I don't know what's going to be like, because we've never done it there. You know, none of us have. Alan's never done it there. George's never done it there. Claire's never done it there. So we're all kind of new. We're all having that sort of first day at school kind of experience.
Yeah.
When we turn up at rehearsals, it's like rehearsals will be okay, but it's like when we walk into that theatre, it's going to be very different. And then when we experience it with an audience, wow. I don't know what's going to be like, but I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
I've actually performed in that stage with my choir.
Have you?
Yeah, for Choir of the Year a couple of years ago, we performed in the competition. It's a wonderful theatre, just so big.
Yeah.
I can imagine
you'll know just how big a space that, not only the stage, which is huge, but the room itself. You know, there's 2,000 seats in there. So yeah, it's.
And by the way, Grant, are you not secretly disappointed playing the henchman this year that you don't get to go on stage wearing a gorgeous dress and donning the old glitty?
Yeah, well, the last time we did Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I was the Wicked Queen, which I really enjoyed. But again, because I like to change things and make it different. And there's actually been a wee change since the poster came out. I was the henchman. It's kind of changed now. So the henchman role is kind of morphed into what was also the man in the mirror. So I'm going to be the man in the mirror, but it kind of plays that henchman role in so much that I go and do the Wicked Queen's bidding out in Pantoland. But that's going to give us an excuse to have a big fabulous mirror on stage with me in it and all that. So yeah, and I'm working on a new parody of a new song to do in the show this year for the first time. So we're kind of working on that at the moment. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with that, and it's going to be in the vein of That's Fife and Save Lives. It'll be very much about where we are, and in particular Edinburgh.
And as you just mentioned there, Grant, you, Alan and Jordan will be joined again by Claire, the daughter of Andy Gray, whose untimely passing back in 2021 was devastating for all who knew him and worked with him, especially you, Grant, as you shared a very close friendship. Both you and Andy worked together over many years in various stage and theatre productions, including starring in Alan's Canned Laughter and also at the Fringe in Kiss Me, Honey, Honey. You also worked together in panto for many years and have pointedly joined the cast of River City, just narrowly missing out and working with him again. Many theatres have traditions in regards to the presence of former players remaining after they've passed away. Do you feel Andy's spirit with you, Grant, as you take to the stage or as you go on set in River City?
Yeah, I always feel he's on my shoulder. I always feel he's there. And I have a little bit of Andy on my, let's just say I carry a bit of something of his, and it's something that a tangible thing that I can touch. Yeah. Just before we shoot something on River City. I would love to see what Pete and Sam would have got up to in Shieldinch had our paths crossed. That would have been lovely. And yeah, so I always feel he's there. I feel his presence on River City, because I feel me joining the show was like a sort of final gift from him to me. He's always going to be part of everything we do in the panto. And here in my little room, I don't know if you can see that. See that up there? You'll hear it.
I can hear it, yeah.
You can hear that. That was a door catch from the King's Theatre, and it was at the corridor to Andy's dressing room. Right. And before him, Gerard Kelly would hit that door catch. Wow. Like that on the way by. And then Andy would hit that door catch on the way by, and then I started hitting that door catch on the way by. And when they've closed the theatre, the guys got me round and let me take that home. So I now have that very door catch in my wee studio here in my house. So yeah, that little bit of history is always going to remain here. Absolutely. And it's good that obviously you've got these cherished memories and memories to take forward with you for the rest of your life. Yeah. And I remember doing my research for the podcast, I watched the episode, the tribute episode to Andy. And it, just from watching that, he was so loved by all the cast, and it must have took a lot for you to film those scenes. But it was very, very well done, that episode.
And on the subject of River City, you also happen to star in River City alongside your panto co-star and close friend Jordan Young, who plays the role of Alex Murdoch while you play the role of Sam Spiller. In a total role reversal from the pantomime, you play a good guy and Jordan plays a bad guy. Have you been exchanging any tips at any point to play each other's parts?
I don't think I need to give Jordan any tips at all. He's a very good baddie, and he's a very good goodie as well. But yeah, that's what I love about River City, because the people there are absolutely lovely, and that was something that Andy always told me about River City. Is the guy, he says he loved working there because everybody was just so nice and so lovely, and getting to work with Jordan is great, because it's brilliant to work with him in panto, but getting to work with him through the year as well is wonderful. Although we don't have many scenes together, we because Alex Murdoch, his life is not quite close to Sam Spiller's, so their paths rarely cross. Although that we've shot we shot one scene together, which again, talking about Andy's tribute episode, they specifically wrote a scene for me and Jordan to be in, so Jordan could be in that episode, and they put Sam and Alex together for the first time in that tribute deliberately, so that we could both be part of Andy's tribute episode, which I think underlines just how everybody cared so much about Andy and the detail that went into that particular episode. We've also shot another scene that Jordan appeared in. Now, I'm not going to give anything away because this has not yet been out, and it's going to come out in December. But there's a very special episode coming up, particularly for the King's Edinburgh panto fans. And that's where Jordan and I come together again, and that's coming out in early December. So you make sure you watch that one.
I will indeed. I've been loving getting back into it again. I've been absolutely cramped to this storyline. It's been wonderful. But I can imagine filming an episode of River City for you. You don't get much notice when you're required to get into work. So how do you manage to juggle that with your pantomime and also your radio work?
Well, for the first year when I joined River City, I was still doing my 3 radio shows. I was doing the afternoon show Wednesday and Thursday, and my vinyl show on the Friday. And the guys at River City managed to make that work. Managed to only schedule me in on a Monday, a Tuesday, or a Friday. Was basically the way it worked. That I was only ever in Dumbarton Monday, Tuesday, or Friday. Occasionally a Wednesday or Thursday, but they would let me know. And then when Sam Spiller arrived and made his mark in Shield Inch, if you like, the boss came to me at the start of this year and said, look, we'd like to make Sam a regular character. How do you feel about that? And I was like, oh, absolutely thrilled. That's fantastic. He said, but we can't make it work like we did before. So we need more time with you. And so I had ultimately a tricky decision to step away from the afternoon show on Wednesday and Thursdays on Radio Scotland to free myself up to be available for River City, which is great. But River City doesn't film all year round, so we're just coming to the end of this series now, and we'll finish this block on the 4th of November. So we'll have a couple of weeks off, and then we'll start rehearsing for panto. So that works fine. And then when panto finishes, we'll have a couple of weeks off, and then we go back to River City. So it works out quite well that they leave us alone, or you get time out over Christmas to go and do panto. And then I'll go back to filming River City again in time for the spring next year. So it kind of works. It's a bit of a juggle, but it's been a brilliant learning curve for me. It's a year and a half nearly I've been on the show now, and that whole intense learning of lines, and it's a really different. It's very different for me. But as we talked about right at the beginning of our chat, it's where I wanted to be, and it's something I was only dreaming of before. So to finally have it is wonderful, and I'm absolutely loving all the things that they're chucking at me for Sam Spiller and the shenanigans for him to get up to. It's great.
It's been great to see Sam come into it more. I'm really looking forward to seeing where he goes as a character. Yeah. Really, it's great to see him interacting now with other characters too. So I'm
enjoying that as well, working with the guys and getting to work with more people. Obviously, Ian, who plays Stevie,
Brilliant.
my son, worked with him a lot, but there's more interaction with Sam and the other characters to come. I've had a lot of fun filming different scenes with different characters, so it's good. Yeah, there's a lot more Spiller to come.
Can't wait. And I can't help but notice as well, Grant, that Jordan, who plays Alex, is a Rangers supporter in real life, but plays a Hearts fan on the show. Scott Fletcher, who plays Angus Lindsay, is a Celtic supporter, but plays a Rangers supporter on the show. Stephen Purden, who plays Shell Suit Bob, is a Rangers supporter, but plays a Celtic supporter on the show. But Grant Stott, who's a Hibs supporter, plays Sam Spiller, who's a Hibs supporter. Did you deliberately get it written into your contract, Grant, that you had to be Sam had to be a Hibs fan?
Oh, I wish I had so much power that was the case. No, but right at the beginning when they were creating the character of Sam and we'd had discussions about me coming on, Martin McCarty says, we want to drop in a few of your traits into and give them to Sam as well. So, because he's from Edinburgh, he's got to be, he's got to support an Edinburgh team. And they made it Hibs because they just thought there'd be a bit of scope because Alex was there as a Hearts fan. They already had a Hearts fan on the show. So it was like I was very lucky because I don't know how I would feel about playing out scenes about supporting the Hearts. Oh! So that moment has not yet happened where Alex Murdoch and Sam Spiller cross over about Hibs and Hearts. But I'm sure it will come. I am sure it will come. But yeah, I'll watch those episodes as well with Scott Fletcher and Stevie Purden talking about their beloved Celtic and Rangers. And I was like, oh my God, and they've done it so well. And I'm like, I don't know how they've managed to do that. But yeah, fair play to them as actors. They've done it very convincingly.
But your story is one, as I mentioned earlier on, it's all about not giving up and just knocking down the door. Even if you don't make it, just keep going.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give to anybody who is wanting to pursue a career, Grant, but maybe is a bit unsure or is maybe had so many setbacks?
Well, it's interesting because both my kids, my son is now 25, my daughter's now 21. And so my daughter's not long graduated from university. So she now finds herself out in the big bad world. And I think it's like, it's very much a case of, there's no rush. Right? I think there was a real sort of sense of urgency for so many years that, you went to school and as you left school, you got a job and then you got a career and then that's what you did. Whereas now I think we're a slightly more relaxed world now where if you want to travel, you can travel. The world is a smaller place from that point of view. My son's over in Canada now and he's working with kids in camps over there and he's going over to work in Whistler for the ski resort. He's been shut down for a couple of years, as we all have. He's now spreading his wings and he's just going to do a bit of traveling and see where the world takes him. My daughter Laurie, she left uni, moved to Glasgow, and started living there, but then got a job in Edinburgh. So she's now moving back to Edinburgh. But it's like, just take your time, and don't get disheartened if things that you perhaps had your heart set on through school, through university, through life don't happen straight away. There's no guarantee that they will happen, but there's every chance that there's the chance that things might, and your life can take you in many different directions. Absolutely. And it's and I think we're in an environment in a world now where opportunities, to do different things and to try different things. You and I talked about us learning new skills when lockdown came. And I've now got a little purpose-built studio in my house. You can now create these wonderful podcasts from home, and we can all do things that we perhaps maybe didn't see ourselves doing, and getting a great deal of satisfaction and joy out of doing that. And also my one bit of advice would be, don't knock anything back because you're scared of failing. And this is what I talked about earlier on. Try it first and see how you get on. If you don't like it, and if it's not for you, you can walk away with your head held high saying, I gave it my best shot and it just wasn't for me.
Absolutely.
Try things. And you'll eventually, like Cinderella, you'll find a slipper that fits.
Fantastic, brilliant. Grant Stott, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on my podcast today, and thank you for being a guest on Clara in Conversation.
It has been a joy to talk to you, and I hope you enjoy Snow 87 Dwarfs when you come and see it at Christmas.
Oh, absolutely, Grant. Grant can be seen on River City, which can be viewed between Monday and Thursday on BBC Scotland and on BBC One Scotland. And for anyone who's out with Scotland who wants to watch River City, you can catch it on BBC iPlayer. You can also see Grant, as we've mentioned, in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which is decanted from the King's Theatre this year to the Festival Theatre, while the King's undergoes a refurb. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs can be seen between the 17th of December 2022 and the 22nd of January 2023, but you need to get tickets quick as they're selling fast. And if you want great music on a Friday night, you can tune in to Grant on the Vinyl Collective between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock for great music and great chat. If you want to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe to my channel and click the little grey bell to be notified of when I next upload a video. Grant, it's been an absolute pleasure again. Thank you so much.
Claire, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed our chat. I think your hosting skills are second to none. You're brilliant.
Thank you so much.